see you. There you go, Steve Dale.
Oh, hold on, we're waiting on Angela.
Come on, Angela.
Do we video these meetings?
Yes, we
Yes, sir.
do. Just one camera up there, but the things that are on the screen are going to be, this time they're going to be fed, so when
Okay.
we watch it, we'll be able to see the screen.
Is that the
We're
camera over there?
ready. We're going to call this meeting to order. Bastrop Economic Development Corporation, Monday, June 20th, 2016. Public comments. Do we have any public comments?
Any public comments?
Can I just say y'all have mics?
We do not.
I know I'm not the public, but do we have a place where we can publicly acknowledge our new board member?
Yes, we already have it on the agenda.
Okay.
Can I ask you all to speak up?
One day I'll
You
read,
have no
one day I'll
eyes,
read the
you can't
agenda in
hear me.
advance. Okay, sorry.
Yeah, that's our next one.
Oh, I see that, sorry.
Do you want to walk through these with us, 3.1?
I do. So 3.1 tonight is a recognition of our outgoing board member, Willie De La Rosa. He is not going to be here until later this evening, and as EDC tradition, we have a small token of appreciation for his years of service on the board, and we will, as staff, and Steve and I will make sure that he gets this at some point tonight or in the next week.
Hold it up for it.
All right, very nice.
We can't hear y'all, and I've got in hearing aids, so.
Okay.
Why don't we have mics tonight so we can all use this? What's happening here?
We've never had mics on the EDC meetings.
No, yes, I've been to.
I have
meetings
too.
down here, and you've always had mics.
Yes. Oh, because I listened through this, so I know that's true.
I'm not in charge.
We've never had mics.
Well, you may not have had it in front of you, but something was mic, maybe, because both Ann and I, we're not telling stories here.
We'll take that under advisement.
Yeah, we'll do what we can to speak up, and we will have, Gene will text Colin, he's around, and see if we can get him up here to,
He's not here.
I know, but text him.
He's off property.
Yeah, just text him.
I'll call him.
Okay, on 3.2, we've got two new members, Camilo Chavez and Drusilla Rogers, and Drusilla's here, and I don't know.
Snuck in.
You all
Snuck on in. Oh, where'd you come from? Old new, that's right.
I'm talking to Cam, I'm not talking to Camilo.
That's right.
Sorry.
That's all right.
I apologize. So go ahead, and anyway, appreciate it.
Drusilla, welcome to the board. Thank you for joining us. Cam is being appointed to his first full term on the board of directors, and we appreciate his last year of service and appreciate the opportunity for both of y'all to come and serve on the BEDC board.
Thank you.
So 3.3 is consideration, discussion, possible action on election of 2016-2017 BEDC officers, chair, vice chair, secretary, treasurer, and assistant secretary and assistant treasurer. This is a matter of the board. Staff provides no guidance or recommendation as it's related to this. We do recommend, though, that you appoint Angela Ryan as assistant secretary and myself as assistant treasurer, unless the secretary or treasurer elected of the board would like to start doing the work.
I'd like to make a motion that we have the same slate of officers this coming year as we had last year.
I'll second that.
Can you say who those are?
Yeah, we
That
better.
would be Steve Mills as chair, Christy Koch as vice chair, Gary Schiff as secretary treasurer, Angela Ryan as assistant secretary, and myself as assistant treasurer.
Okay, sorry.
Okay, we have a motion and a second.
Any questions?
Discussion?
So, discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Consideration, discussion, possible action on the board schedule for 2016-2017. In your packet is the calendar for the next year. I do want to point out that Monday, July 11th is going to be a special board meeting and budget workshop. We will preview the budget tonight, but that will actually be when we get into the meat and potatoes. That's July 11th. We have gone through the board meeting dates as the board has requested previously and made all of the adjustments necessary for holidays that affect our meeting date on the third Monday. So that's January 23rd and February 27th are the two adjusted dates for holidays. So y'all can put those in your calendar and we are good to go there.
Do we need to approve those, or are we good to go with that, or?
This agenda item says possible action, so do we need to?
There's no approval necessary, that's just a posting on there.
I'd like to, let's vote on it. I'd like the board to take responsibility for when we're going to meet. Do you have any problem with that,
Well,
Steve?
I've gone
July
through,
11th.
all of these are our standard meetings except for the two that were postponed.
And that makes
for holidays.
sense. I move that we approve this schedule for the board for this year.
I'll
All right.
second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
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 We lost our screen. We're going to move to 3.5, which is a presentation by staff, but we're going to jump to, well, we'll just go through these in order. So last week at TEDC, or 2 weeks ago at TEDC, the board was recognized for excellence in economic development, and the EDC was, there's basically scoring criteria for various levels of training and education that we as staff and you as a board have to obtain, and we received a certificate for economic excellence for 2015. This is our second year in a row to receive that. We also received it in 2014. We also put the Career Day and Youth Career Day and Job Fair in for the Workforce Excellence Awards. Although we did not win this year, we were recognized as a merit recipient for that. And then we had, since we saw y'all last week, had the Career Day, and we are going to show a brief video that student Chris White put together for us about the day.
Partnered with the EDC, and we believe in the chamber, and we've had many meetings throughout the year to orchestrate all of these processes that you see in place today. EDC and that team has been tremendous in helping us make this happen. Of course, we have also other school district personnel that have been instrumental in this. Bridget Cornelius at CCH has also been huge member in helping us orchestrate this with Cedar Creek kids coming this way, as well as Bastrop. So that's how this event came to play. Also, these employers that you see here today are very well versed in wanting to help students achieve their goals past high school. They are all selected to be here and all honored to be here and specifically want to help students. So far we have, it's about 300 students here today walking through these areas, this venue, and really getting the information that they need to succeed in life. And I would tell you, on a scale of 1 to 10, we're at a 10, and we couldn't have done that without all of these vendors here today. Couldn't have done it without Michael Hosford, who gave a wonderful speech this morning, and the panel that answered questions. We couldn't have done it without the EDC, the We Believe chapter, and the Chamber of Commerce. We're just so blessed to have those folks in our lives.
Miss Womble called me and asked if I would be interested in talking to the kids here at Career Day. It's a big passion of mine. Apparently someone had shared that with her. I moved back to Bastrop in 08 for this reason. I was a graduate here in 1997, and I felt like that if I could come back and help today's graduating kids have more information about what's available, what to do, what not to do, what you can do, then I would contribute any way that I can. So when she called, I was honored to do it, and it's been an exciting event and an exciting day so far.
So me now being a little bit older, if I was going to talk to kids about what to look for in the future, I would say check out all your options. There's more than just going to college. There's ways to stay out of student debt loans. The military is a great route. These other companies that aren't your typical careers are also good, and just do what makes you happy, man.
Hi, how's it going? I'm engineering for Jamco. And what we do is we do the exterior skin for buildings such as this. And we do our buildings from here in Austin all the way to the DC area. And what we do is we take the architect's design and through our shop and our field installation, we turn them into reality. So it's nice to be here as Bastrop. There's a lot of opportunities in engineering and in construction. So we encourage you to come on out, see what we do.
Hi there, I'm Erin Martinez and I'm at the August Escoffier School of Culinary Arts in Austin, Texas. This is a great event that we're having here today. I've talked to many students about the programs that we offer. We offer two programs, one in pastry arts, which is 8 months, and then we offer an associate's degree in culinary arts, which is 15 months. And I've talked to several students today, all different ages, a lot of juniors, a lot of seniors especially, and they're going to come into our school, check it out, get a tour. I'm very pleased with the turnout. I love the students here. They're very friendly. It's a great event, and I'm having a great time. And looking forward to talking to more students today as well.
This is my second year doing it, and it seems very organized this year. We've had a lot of students express a lot of interest in what we do, and we've been explaining about the different campuses that MD Anderson has, and the main campus in Houston, as well as the campus in Bastrop and Smithville, and I think the kids are learning a lot.
Look for something that's going to make you happy, because that's the biggest point in any career, is being happy with what you're doing. That will get you further than anything else. Money is just a bystander or a byproduct of being happy. As far as what you're doing, it's got to be something that you're passionate about.
I really appreciate your time and your patience and your attention this morning. I wish you the best in life and good luck for the next 2 weeks of school. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Great. Great.
I would like to say one thing real quick. Sean kind of breezed over it, but the young man that did this video is a student at Bastrop High School, and he is in the media program that they have, and is now starting out as an intern with the city of Bastrop, and they are working on actually creating a position for him now because he's actually taught them a lot. And so once again, it's a great example of working directly with our workforce and bringing them into the schools and showing them what our students are capable of, and being able to connect them back to an industry that they're passionate about. And it's a great two-way street, and we get amazing results when that happens. So I just wanted to say thank you to the city of Bastrop for allowing Chris to be so creative, and he's starting his own, I guess, monthly, weekly little program that he's been working on as well. So keep up on ETXN because he'll be posting his stories on there.
I know that Richard and Ann have an intern in their shop that came out of the job fair as well, so we've got quite a few success stories from this year's Youth Career Day, and are looking forward to next year's as well.
That's all for you, girl.
Absolutely.
Thank you. And I'd like to recognize our staff for the awards they just won. I know they do a great job, and I think they're recognized throughout the state as one of the great EDCs. So,
3.6 is approval of the meeting minutes from May 16th, 2016. They should be in your packet.
Does anybody have any discussion on this?
I move that we approve the minutes.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
3.7 is consideration, discussion, possible action on acceptance of the BEDC financial summary report for the period ending May 31st, 2016. You should have in your packet the financial summary. We're running about $1.2 million at the end of May in actual revenue against the budget of $1.933 million. That's 62% of budget for this year. We're 58% through the year. Looking at $877,000 in expenditures, or 45% of budget. We're tracking along right where we think we should be. Looking at the summary of revenues, tracking along with what our...
We're in the wrong month.
Yeah. Did we have the wrong month?
Yeah, you're a month off. That's last month.
Yeah, we're at 980.
The audience then is going to have to forgive me.
No, the print is correct.
Oh, it is?
Okay.
We only have a problem. We only have a problem with our executive director, so.
I pulled the wrong one for
Operator
the
problems.
spreadsheet. All right. Everybody's going to have to listen close then. So we're on actual revenues we're 67% through the end of May, and 1.4 million in actual revenues. That's 73% of the budget year, or 73% of our budget at 1.933 million. 982,000 for fiscal year 16 actual against a $1.933 million budget. That's 50% of budget for the year. We are tracking along quite well, and I did check these earlier today. May revenues are good. There's no anomalies in the May revenues. When you look at sales tax collections on the next page, 19, we're positive 201,000 over 177,000 the previous year. Expenditure charts, I will try to make this brief, but since we don't have the picture for the public, 37% for debt service, 17% for personnel, 5% for maintenance and occupancy, 17% for contractual services, and 23% for other. We do have a small slither in there for supplies and materials. Looking at the expenditures for the fiscal year, looking at FY16, we're tracking along right where we need to be. The bumps in the graph are really our 380 agreement payments, or our sales tax rebates, and so they're in a little bit different months this year than they have been previously, but we're in compliance with all of those agreements. And then the final page of the summary is basically our gross fund balance at the end of September 30th, which is $3.2 million. And I can tell you that when I do the calculations every month to update that we're healthier than that. So, and there's no anomalies in the financial statement or the balance sheet that I saw.
Any questions or comments about this? Okay, I mean, it looks like still very strong activity, and expenses are being managed within the budget, so it's good. Thank you, Sean.
So we need to accept this report, or?
Yeah, that is correct.
I move that we accept the financial summary report.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Item 4.1 is consideration, discussion, possible action on appointing a BEDC representative to the Main Street Board. We have an ex officio position on that board. Angela Ryan has been filling that position for some time. She has asked that if a board member does not wish to fill that position, that I be appointed to fill that position moving forward. But this is a board decision, and if one of y'all would like to volunteer to be our ex officio, please let us know who that would be. If not, staff recommendation is to appoint myself in that place.
I'd like to make a motion to appoint Sean Kirkpatrick as the representative to the Main Street Advisory Board.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, Kim. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So 4.2 is consideration, discussion, possible action on the vacant lot at 921 Main Street owned by the City of Bastrop related to the Bastrop EDC's proposal to develop a master plan including but not limited to mitigation, shell building, and finish out potential proposal of commercial redevelopment of the site. The EDC actually, and we're going to pass these out, and we may not have enough for the board. The EDC has looked at this site previously in previous years. We've kind of gone through and done kind of a history here. on a couple pages. The city acquired the site in 2009. In 2010, the EDC actually identified this redevelopment as one of our top 5 potential projects. A month later, we looked to encourage the development. In July of 2010, Mr. Newman, the executive director at the time, presented to council during a public hearing to encourage the development on behalf of the EDC. We actually budgeted in FY 2010-2011 to acquire the site from the city. Moving forward in 2010, we actually submitted an offer on the vacant slab. The concept of the plaza was also presented a month later from that. We made a formal offer. The letter was addressed and delivered to the city. Mr. Newman was resigned or retired from the EDC, and we moved forward, and this wasn't a topic of conversation again until 2012 when it was identified as a potential project in 2013. And in 2013, DBA signed the lease agreement with the city and gets us to where we're at. For the sake of everybody involved, we went ahead and did a location map. We're basically looking at the red or pink square on the map there that was destroyed by a fire back in the early 2000s. Back in 2011, the AIA came and did an SSTAT study. Part of that study, they debated about what to do with that site or a recommendation for that site, but they did ultimately unanimously determine that a permanent structure was probably the best option for it. Looking at how we as staff developed what we're looking at today, I actually serve on the design committee, or at least attend the design committee meetings. I try to say I don't serve, but Sarah informed me that if I show up, I serve. We met with the design committee a couple times. We met with the Main Street chair and the Downtown Business Alliance chair and the Main Street director. We also were at the Main Street meeting in June when it was removed from the priority list for the design committee. We've had conversations with Christy Koch on our board, with Dan Hayes Clark, who's on the Historic Landmark Commission, Richard Smarzik, who is the neighboring property owner. Just a quick update, and this has been a topic of conversation for some time. What we as staff, when we looked at this from an EDC perspective, and we solely are looking at this from an EDC perspective, we were not asked to look at it as a city perspective or from the council perspective. We looked at it from enhancing Bastrop's economy and economic development. Obviously, if the EDC board wanted to move forward with a project, we'd need to have some control of the site because there's going to be considerable cost associated with a redevelopment of a mixed-use development. Our recommendation as staff would be to put together what is commonly referred to as a master plan, which would require an RFQ for architecture and engineering firm. Sarah has made application to the Texas Historical Commission for what's called the Town Square Initiative Feasibility Study, which basically provides their architectural and economic development staff to come in and assist our A&E firm in master planning this with conceptual designs, with financial modeling of it, and some other services. That program, think of it more back in the day as the Courthouse Square program, where they would come into courthouse squares and help revitalize courthouses and the courthouse square. It's now the Town Square Initiative, and so it's more attuned to what's going on in Main Street Bastrop than it probably has in years past. Project phasing for this, once the master plan is developed, you're looking at what is the water mitigation issue at the site. You're looking at some type of shell building construction, and then ultimate tenant finish out for the project. When we look at it from the EDC perspective, there's 3 opportunities to sell the property, disposition of property, if you look at it in the terms that we deal in. if the board decides it wants to move forward and we can, and the council wishes to allow us to have control of the site, you're looking at A&E and THC programs going on simultaneously. Part of that A&E would be the engineering and contracting to have the water mitigation done. Once that's done, you take what is now a brownfield site and you make it a developable site. There's that opportunity to look at either a private developer stepping in and executing on the master plan, or looking at what's referred to in our business as a public-private partnership, in which the EDC partners with a private developer to kind of still have some control of what the site looks like and the ultimate finish out of it, but it's a private development with our investment in it as well. We've had a lot of conversation. You see the bottom there with the pocket park. That's also a decision point for the community once the master plan is done. Does it, and you've gone from that brownfield site that's been remediated now, does it want to do the pocket park as has been discussed, or the gathering space downtown, or do we want to move forward with a private or public-private partnership? And if there is no developer that steps forward, go ahead and move forward with constructing a shell building. While that shell building is under construction, if there's not a private partner or a public-private partnership in place, there'll be another opportunity to offer it out for sale prior to getting to the tenant finish out. Once the shell building's complete, you really need to move into some type of utilization for the building and the tenant finish out. You look at the end and you see private or public. The opportunity for a public-private partnership at that point really goes away, and you either have a private development or a public development. If we get to the tenant finish out stage, the EDC is still in leased office space. The second floor of what we feel as staff is a reasonable proposal. We could move into the second floor, move out of our lease space, and be back in an owned building by the EDC. The other thing that it does for us is if we want, we can lease back our space to a private developer as an anchor tenant on the second floor. It provides a lot of options and opportunities to put this back on the tax rolls and generate ad valorem tax as well as sales tax down the road. It is a fairly pricey endeavor to go and build out this space. I visited earlier with some over the last couple weeks, and then again this morning once I added all these up. You're looking at $250,000 for water mitigation. You're looking at 1.9 to 2.2 million to construct a shell building. You're looking at $275,000 to $550,000 for tenant finish out, depending upon the uses of the building. For a total, and architecture and engineering is currently estimated at $250,000. You're looking at a total price tag to build out this project at $2.7 to $3.2 million. Gross potential income, we haven't done a lot of economic modeling on valuations after construction, but we've estimated the gross potential income at somewhere between $200,000 and $250,000 annually. So what we would propose, at least as staff, and these are just initial concept drawings to start the conversation. We employed a SketchUp artist that does these types of renderings at a very reasonable cost versus going to a designer or an architectural engineering firm. Basically a 2.5-story structure that meets the form-based code and the 35-foot height requirement. You'll notice that the third floor up there, or the half floor up there, is set back in order to be in compliance with form-based code. There's some street view issues with going that high. When you look at the adjoining buildings with Relics to the north and with Baxter's to the south, this is going to be a very similar height building. It's going to be a little bit taller, but not that much more than what they are. We think the patios on the front provide some opportunities for the building as well. Looking at basically a 3-story internal structure, and one of the things that Brad Cook at DBA mentioned is that he would like to see in a possible, or at least consideration of the design, and we went ahead and included it in these drawings, is a rooftop terrace. There's some opportunities with that for special events downtown, whether it be third parties renting it out to come into town to utilize that. We look at it as a space that when you look at the 4th of July fireworks, some company may want to rent it, or a group of individuals to be able to watch the fireworks over the river. There's a number of uses for that. Whether it would get incorporated in the final design, if you read my memo, there's going to have to be a lot of financial feasibility analysis done because of the cost to construct a rooftop terrace. We look at it, we've had a couple of thoughts on this since we sent this off to the SketchUp artist, and we didn't really want to spend a whole lot of EDC resources perfecting any design, and these are definitely just SketchUps of what could potentially be available. Most likely the retail space would end up being halved and being 1,000, 1,200 square feet, with the back half facing Alley D being some type of either retail or office, but you'd have an office lobby as well as bathrooms, a hallway that stretches all the way through from the Alley D parking lot to the front, with singular offices on the first floor. Looking at the second level, we went ahead and made sure that if we needed to move down there in EDC offices, would we have the space that we needed to be functional and to accommodate our needs. You see the training room on the second floor with the boardroom overlooking Main Street. Pretty amazing space, I think, in that sense. Looking at what our needs would be, or some company that uses that type of space. Looking at a couple different front renderings in which you can see the rooftop terrace design. Looking at the rear elevations, one of the questions that we asked specifically going this high was, how do we meet the fire code and the external stairwell on the Alley D, which I think in my world is a really cool feature and really would set this building, make it architecturally significant from the rear services that need going that high. But that is staff's presentation on this.
We've done an economic impact analysis on this to see what kind of benefit it has to the community financially.
We have not, but if that is something the board wants us to do, we can do that.
Yeah, I think that would be probably in order.
They're kind of, at some point, yes, they're kind of pricey to order at this phase. And that's something that the THC with their Town Square initiative will actually perform for us.
To me, the question is, I've owned 5 buildings downtown Bastrop. I've yet to see buildings downtown go for more than $100 a square foot. And you're talking about spending $300 a square foot to build a building that when it's completed, at least compared to everything else downtown, is 3 times the price per square foot of anything downtown. How do we justify that?
We're seeing them go somewhere in the 150 range at the current moment. And there's probably people that have more recent sales. I'd have to pull the comps, but we're seeing them in the $150 a foot range. It is a very tough justification, but we just need to run the economic modeling on it to make sure that the revenues generate the returns that we're looking for. And at this point, we're just looking to the board to go, is it something you're even interested in? Steve?
Your price per square foot, is that like retail space or is that office space? I know office space usually goes for a little higher than a larger retail space on that price per square foot.
So you're looking at about $180 to $200 a square foot to build the shell, and depending upon the finish out, you're looking at $25 to $50 on the finish out. Retail space is going to run in the $25 range because there's not as many walls, electrical outlets, those types of things. Office space is going to be closer to that $50 a square foot.
Oh no, I was talking about your rent that you were looking at, like you were saying, it's $100 a square foot.
We've done an adjustment for the different spaces within the building. We actually priced the third floor as residential loss, and you saw it as unfinished. That really would not be a finish out that the EDC would get involved in because it's not unless it's affordable housing under the law. It's not something that we would actually get involved in, but when we did our revenue model, we based it on residential lofts being on the third floor.
You might explain a little bit more about the reasoning for the water mitigation and the extraordinary expense of that? Because that's really what's driving this cost up so high.
Yeah, there's somewhere around $250,000 in water mitigation, and you've got 2 exposed walls on the north and the south that were not meant to be exposed, as well as some water penetration in the joints between the buildings. And you also have a back wall that is unstable and needs to be removed. You saw in my estimate that there was no value for the land in there. I'm not an appraisal expert, but considering what the value of that site would be less the mitigation to get that brownfield site into rebuildable, it's neutral to negative at best, and has limited to in its current condition, has little value, which is an interesting predicament to be in. I'm not here to be a legal expert and why the mitigation needs to take place, but that's the first phase, is to take care of the mitigation, get it to a developable site, whether it's a pocket park or whether it is a mixed-use commercial
The
site.
water needs to be taken care of one way or another.
Do the current tenants on both sides have issues with those exposed walls as it sits today?
So on one side, we have an owner-occupied building, and they have been vocal about their issues associated with it. On the other side of it, we have an owner-leasee relationship, and so you've got a different dynamic between the building owner and the leasee, and I have not heard of anything or had any visits with them about what their issues may or may not be.
So the owner-leasee agreement is on the Baxter side, correct?
Correct.
But what is the form of that mitigation as you see it, or do you propose a certain technique for mitigating the water issue?
My recommendation to this board would be to hire a qualified engineering firm to make a recommendation and to move forward with what that engineering firm recommends.
Okay, because to me, as I look at it, the best way to mitigate the water issue is to build a building there to put a roof over it.
Correct.
But you really can't build a roof over that property and then subsequently build a building to fill. I mean, you can, but it's not how you usually build a building. You don't start at the top and build downward, you start at the bottom and you build up. So, you know, I challenge the approach of mitigating the water first and then building a building on the site, because the building is the mitigation as I see it.
The one thing that we do know is the slab is going to need to be removed prior to a new building being constructed on it. You're not going to be able to use the existing slab and support the side structures on the north and south with the beams that are necessary to hold up the walls. Most likely, in the engineers that I visited with, you're going to go up with CMU block on the north and south walls to get up above the existing roof lines of your neighbors, and then you're going to flash and cap the existing neighbors. And so you're going to need to remove the existing slab in the back wall from the site as part of the mitigation.
Well, you don't actually, I don't think necessarily have to remove the entire slab to mitigate if it's an issue of how the new structure will be supported. You can remove just the area of the slab where the new structure will be, or where you put piers wherever you need to structurally reinforce it. It really depends on a lot of things as far as the slab integrity and whether you would remove the entire slab, remove part of it. Anyhow, it's not worth getting into all those issues without really a deeper study.
Yeah, there's lots of ways to do this. It did look like within 10 or 11 years we'd have.
With the gross potential income on it, if you could get it fully leased from an EDC perspective, you know, even if we had to hold the building for 4 or 5 years as we looked for a seller and we officed there, you know, we would recoup some of our investment through the lease revenue, which is a perfectly allowable expense under the law. We'd have a little bit of difficulty on the third floor, not being able to finish it out in residential office, but we would continue to offer it as office space and see if we could find an office tenant for that floor, unless a private developer stepped in.
Could some of this space be made available to other city entities down there?
Yes.
You could use the third floor like a dance studio or something, and still be retail. I mean, still be a space without being
If it was a public use and we were there, we'd make the third floor available for bulk lease.
Right.
Basically, you know, go ahead and put the HVAC requirements necessary to heat and cool that on a basis to lease the space out for special events or whatever it is. If we didn't do the rooftop terrace, that'd be a perfectly acceptable use for that space.
Does that elevator go all the way to the third floor?
It does. And if the rooftop terrace were there, it would have to go all the way to the 4th floor. That's one of the considerations on the rooftop terrace. Going from a 3-story elevator to a 4-story elevator puts you in a different class of elevator. And so your cost basis on the elevator goes up dramatically, as well as your inspection requirements on that 4-story elevator.
I'd like to point out and just reemphasize that ground floor answers some of the concerns the public has raised for the public restroom becomes available, a pass through to the back. You have an area for some public gathering, correct?
Correct. We tried to listen to what the design committee, what the Main Street Board, what DBA was sharing with us, what the neighbors were sharing with us, and kind of what they would like to see in that space, and doing our homework in kind of looking at what a private development, what a public-private partnership, and then ultimately, if it needed to be, what a public development all the way through the end would need to look like. The trick for us as a community is to really have a master plan of what we would like to see in that site, in engaging a qualified architecture and engineering firm with the assistance from THC to have a shovel-ready project for a private developer, or if it need to be, the EDC to move forward with the couple phases of a public development.
I'd like to just, for those who didn't attend the last city council meeting, that I had a proposal that I put together that I would like to see this piece of property, which I agree with Sean. I believe this piece of property has actually a negative value right now, that it is not worth what the appraised, if you add the mitigation and the appraised value together, you come up negative. And so I would like to see that see if there's an interest in the private sector to develop this piece of property, that if we offer it, if we say, well, we're taking best offers, whether it be a grant of free property, whether it be a bid of some price for the property, but just have the community come back at us and say, hey, we're willing to take this property and do X with it, and build in some clawback provisions in that agreement that whoever makes the proposal has to perform the work that they propose, or there's clawback provisions that there's a cost or a term that the property would come back to the city. Years ago, I proposed, when we were trying to come up with a solution, BEDC was trying to come up with a solution to deal with this piece of property of buying. I proposed that the BEDC buy the property for the appraised value, with the intention that the BEDC, which has legal methods to grant property in exchange for economic development, that the BEDC take that on and try to find a solution, somebody that we can deal with to take on that property as a private project. And my thought is that we could expedite the process, because BEDC has fewer regulations as far as the exchange of economic benefit for the property, whereas the city has to sell the property for the appraised value. Subsequently, I realized that the appraised value really is not, in my estimation, the value of the building. When you take at least $200,000 to make that piece of property structurally secured and dried in, and you take a value that's on the the tax rolls of 175,000 or whatever it is, you actually end up with a negative property value. And with a negative property value, the city could actually grant that property to a developer. I believe, and I'd go back to the city attorney, but I believe that if the property appraised for nothing, we could sell it for nothing and take an offer of a good private development to go on that property and still build some clawbacks into that agreement to see a quality project developed there at no cost to BEDC, at no cost to the citizens of Bastrop through either the city or the BEDC. That was my proposal.
Do you have someone in mind when you say that?
I don't have anyone in mind. And I don't know that anybody will take me up on it. I personally, I wouldn't touch that property with a 10-foot pole. You'd have to pay me a lot of money to take the property.
Well, I happen to believe in private sector all the way, but I think this is a good marriage where you could have public-private, and it lets us have some control on a very important facade. That is our front door. It's a little missing tooth in the front of our
Yeah, but at what
downtown.
cost? I mean, at a $3 million cost, if we spent $3 million in the industrial park,
You're assuming there's that we do everything. We've talked that we might be able to have a public-private partnership, which would be ideal for us. And you're assuming that someone's going to come in and do something that you just said you won't touch.
but I say that, but I talked to somebody that lives here in the city of Bastrop that said, hey, I'd like to develop a downtown loft.
Then you do know
I'd like to live downtown. I would build a building that has an apartment on the second floor and retail on the first floor. That could be built a lot cheaper than this because if it's a residential facility, you don't have to put the elevator in. There's $100,000 gone just like that if you have to put the elevator in. So, you know, I think that there are, I think it's worth a shot to put it out there and say, hey, does anybody want to put a nice development in this slot? Come and give us your proposal. Let's hear what you got to say. But we've been sitting on this thing for years and years and years. It hasn't moved an inch, and I'm personally would be extremely disappointed in the BEDC to spend $2.5 million to $3.5 million to do a development downtown that creates a building that when it's finished would be at least twice the cost per square foot of anything selling downtown.
So are there other opportunities for this board if, for example, the city said, we'll sell you that lot for $1? Are there opportunities short of what this president, I appreciate the presentation, is there something short of that that is within the mission of this board that would make sense for us from an economic development standpoint, especially given Christie's point of view that are we hurting everything else by not doing something with it? So is there something short of that we can do that would make any sense?
I have two comments, or maybe three. One is, since I've lived here, it's been that slab has been there, and has been a topic of several conversations back when I was on P&Z. My first question is, why hasn't, if it's city-owned property, why hasn't the city done anything? That's number one. Sitting in this board, why hasn't the city done anything? Which tells me if the city hasn't done anything, either A, it's not on the priority list, or B, it's really not something that's financially sound, or there's been a lot of conflict of what should it be. Okay? So the second part of it is, from an economic standpoint, is two things. Does everything the EDC do have to generate a net profit, or is our entity about economic development as a whole? Okay, so what that looks like, whether it's 150 or 300, I don't know. I'd have to dig in and look at those numbers. But I think we have to look at it from those 2 points of view. And then I guess the final comment I would make is, if we do, say we were to make a swap, or hey, we're going to do this and we're going to mitigate it and cut our expenses and do the best we can, there are going to be some people that are looking over the fence saying it's a waste of EDC money or it's a waste of taxpayers' money because it's above that cost. So I guess my comment would be, I think the city and EDC have to kind of come together on this, because either way you look at it, it's either A, going to be a private sector, to your point, Gary, just say, hey, someone do this and run with it, or it's going to have to be a joint effort from the city and EDC. I may be way off the mark, but just look at the numbers, because I agree with you. When I look at the numbers, that's staggering for me.
In terms of the partnership, deals can go either way.
Sure.
Gary's trying to get us off the dime by coming up with something.
Sure.
I mean, the commendable thing about Gary's proposal from the city council's perspective is he's got an idea. And we've been sitting on it for 11 years, and maybe all three of your answers is why we haven't done anything. Or your proposal, your ideas. But if the EDC were to come to the city and say, here's what we wish you would do, and we'll partner with you. I mean, that's a different perspective than what's going to be on the table on the 28th when Gary's motion is perfected. So if we wanted to make pass a resolution or something tonight, with staff to go to the city staff and talk about whatever it is, it might be a partnership or a potential conversation about partnerships, it might give the city an opportunity to step back a little bit and to say, as you said, maybe the two entities together are big enough to do something.
Yeah, because I know that, correct me if I'm wrong, but the current space that the EDC is occupying now was kind of to fill a gap that occurred because of a bad building. So whether we do it now or in a year or two, we're going to have to fill that void at some point, if I recall correctly.
We have 2 option years on our current lease.
Okay. And if memory serves me correct, I don't have my minutes, but if memory serves me correct, the long-term plan was to have a building that the EDC could office out of, as well as rent office space. Was that correct? Am I correct in recalling that?
We've looked at several office campus type of developments. None of them have been fully packaged together, but we think that there is demand for office space and that we could attract tenants and businesses to Bastrop and create jobs by having additional office space available.
I know that, I'm sorry, I know that I'm kind of new to the board here, but not new to that empty space. I mean,
you know it well. Full or empty? Take
yeah, I did. But I like Gary's idea that a private sector will do it, but I really don't think the private sector is going to come along anytime soon. And the problem that that Relics has had is because we've pushed this situation off for 11 years, or however many years ago it burned. So the longer we push it off, the worse the problem is getting. If we would have repaired it 10 years ago, the cost wouldn't be $3 million. If we push it off for 2 more years, the construction costs are just going to go up. So I just push that the board and the city make a decision and act quicker.
Yeah, I might add that my proposal to the council was to immediately put out an RFP and in a 45 or 60-day period ask for proposals back. So, we would have an answer.
So there'd be a limit time that you'll put this out for only so long before.
I would expect our proposals before the end of summer.
Oh, I just want to make sure that we're thinking timely.
Now.
The building is deteriorating as we all talk about it.
I guess you're talking about basically someone give a proposal, we think this land has no value. I think it does have value. I think that's a real important spot on our facade. I don't think residential is the best use there. You may get a proposal, but I think this is a good solution. And I truly believe in our town, and I think we're going to see appreciation in the values in this investment.
We do have 2 public comments, or 2 public speakers on this. Are you ready for them?
I guess my only comment is that we have to remember the reason that's vacant, and it was fire. And so I'm assuming that when you talk about $200,000 to $250,000 for water mitigation, that you really don't know what kind of damage has actually been done with that fire. And so you're trying to cover yourself with the 250,000. But I mean, you might have some severe structural issues to deal with that we don't know about at this point.
Yeah.
And the slab's got to go, you got to rebuild the slab, but we don't know about those vertical walls that, make up the north and south walls right now. So.
Yeah, until you get an engineer on the project that's going to master plan and look at the structural needs long-term for what would be a shell building on that site, you don't know. I mean, and there's a lot of guesswork that goes into putting this budget together. There may be some cost savings because you do move forward with a shell building fairly quickly over the water mitigation. From a staff perspective, we're always going to err on the side of caution and would rather be too high at this phase than too low and have to come ask for $500,000 10 months from now, 12 months from now because we missed the mark.
Well, I like the idea that you've already talked to council about of the RFP, and I mean, it's not going to hurt to cast that out there.
Well, yeah, and I think we're talking about a couple of months. We've been going on this thing for years.
Right.
Let's throw it out there before we take action with this board. Let's go out and see if there's any private entity that's interested in doing something like Sean's proposing. I'd love to see somebody just come in and say, hey, I'll do that. And then we just get it done and move on with life. But if that doesn't happen, then I say, all right, let's bring it back and let's hash it through.
Do we do public comments or?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
We've got 2 people requesting to speak. Kay Garcia McNally.
My name is Kay McAnally. I'm a resident here. First of all, I want to thank you for addressing my handicap. I probably got these things in, so I'm probably yelling because I can't hear myself. Let me take them out. No, can you hear me here?
I can hear
Okay.
fine, thank you.
Okay. Secondly, I would like to say that the property was taken off the priority list of Main Street. It is my understanding anyway, because they wanted to keep this from being pushed back so that water mitigation could take place, because we have property owners that need to have immediate action done. And I would say that needs to be addressed first, no matter what. And if the cost of doing business is to address that situation, then we just need to address it immediately. Secondly, Mr. Shipp is a realtor in development, realtor and developer. I'm afraid you've done the city a huge disservice by driving down the value of that property by stating publicly that you wouldn't touch it with a 10-foot pole. And I think that is really harmful to the value of that property that is owned by the city. And I wish you wouldn't make comments like that anymore. Secondly, to one and two this thing, we do onesies all the time. What we need is a master plan for all of downtown so that we know what can be developed. In the vision of the whole of downtown in that space, we have a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to get this right. Once every 100 years, we might have a fire that leaves us a gathering space. I think that it's extremely important that we do it right. We have an opportunity to have, what is the name of that program? The Look at the Town Square program. What is it, John?
The Town Square Initiative.
Town Square Initiative. They will not only do the best use assessment of that property, but they will also, without cost to BEDC, put in some design free of charge. And Sarah's already made the application, so in a week or so we should know if we've made the approval list. So BEDC would not even need to do that until we have some opportunity to actually look at the best use of this development. The second thing, the third thing, fourth thing, whatever it is, did you look, Sean, at the economic development that could be enhanced by the use of a public space there as well? Or did you only look at what could be enhanced with a building there?
I only looked at it from the perspective of if the EDC took this on as a project, what would be our role in that place? Our role in that place would be a commercial mixed-use type of structure, putting it back as, because that's where our funding and legally where we can go. Looking at it from the perspective of going to a gathering space, pocket park, it is not really an EDC function. And so we only looked at it from what our capabilities within our legal structure allowed us to do.
So may I ask a question then? Are you saying that it's not within your legal capabilities to look at how a gathering space would economically improve the downtown area?
It's not within our funding structure.
It's not within your funding structure?
Correct. If that is, if you're looking at it from a holistic community approach, it's something that the combination of what we proposed with hiring an architect and engineer to help master plan that space, along with THC being involved, once that site is water mitigated, if the community decided that it wanted to move forward with that, that was an option that that at least us as staff have said is perfectly feasible and would consider. Now, the funding source for the public space, pocket park, whatever gathering space, what that is to be determined. From at least staff's perspective, if the EDC was to move forward beyond the water mitigation, it would be with a commercial structure, putting it back on the tax rolls for ad valorem and sales tax generation. But that doesn't mean that once it's mitigated and we put it out, that first time for that public-private partnership, that somebody doesn't step forward and say, we can do the gathering space type of environment there and accomplish all the goals and missions. And that may be what THC ultimately recommends. That's why those two in our process are jointly intertwined together.
JC, could I ask you a question regarding what Kay was saying? If it becomes a public place, a pocket park, whatever, and it indirectly obviously enhances economic development in the downtown area, is that, I think her question is, can we spend funds on that, in other words?
Yes, you can. All economic development doesn't have to be commercial or retail or a construction of a building. And as a matter of fact, I think that there's actually, there's even a component or a statutory...
it's the under 20,000 population rule, as long as the board deems it as an economic benefit to the community.
So absolutely, there is a provision that would allow expenditures for this size community and for this big corporation if it were determined that that particular use drove economic benefits to the community.
Okay, well thank you. I think that's what you're asking, right?
That's exactly right, Steve.
Okay.
And so now that we're on the subject, I would ask that EDC look at partnering with the city to start water mitigation immediately for the whole of the downtown area, especially for the two buildings on either side of that area. And if the cost, unfortunately, has got worse over the years, then we need to fix it right away. And I ask the EDC to please partner with the city in getting a structural analysis done, or to consider doing that, and to look at how we can work together for the good of the whole plan for the whole of downtown by getting this corrected at once. That's my request. Thank you.
Thank you.
One comment to Kay, which is just depending, if this thing was master planned and laid out, one of your things or goals...
Wait, hold on, Christy, I can't hear. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I think one of the goals of your pocket park was public assembly. And depending, but it needs a roof, it needs all kinds of things. If this was designed collaboratively with all of that input, there's a good chance this can accommodate that. I mean, we could design that for that public assembly event type.
I'm not saying that this is a bad plan or a good plan. I have no idea what kind of plan. I just hope we can get the professionals to come in and let us know the best use of this property. And once that's determined, then I hope we can all work together for the good of the entire downtown.
I'm going to make one comment. It's not going to be a popular one. But I don't see how it is the EDC's financial obligation on a piece of property that we don't own.
I'd like to make a comment, and that is that while I made the comment that I wouldn't develop that piece of property, I finished that little section of my talk saying that I do know somebody that is interested in developing that piece of property. So it's not that nobody would take it. I'm just saying that it doesn't lend itself necessarily to building it out unless you have a very specific use that you can justify yourself the cost that it will, what it's going to cost to build it. And so if I was going to live downtown, if I wanted to live downtown, and I said I'm willing to spend the money to build my house and have some retail under it, you know, you don't have to justify everything based on the economics of it. But if I'm renting a facility to someone, if I build it as a developer, because I don't want to live downtown myself, if I build it as a developer, it's going to be very, very difficult for somebody to justify spending that kind of money and getting a return that makes sense and having it a confidence level that the space will continually be leased. I mean, I can build a space and say I'm selling this space at so many dollars a square foot, and maybe get somebody signed up to it and maybe not. I mean, it's a very risky thing if we go in without having tenants before you build a building. Very, very risky in the downtown marketplace. If you are the occupant of the building, if you are the retail business, you can justify, hey, I'm going to be here for years. Eventually, the property values will come up to what I'm spending on it. I can justify it. And, you know, I have built things that I've spent more money than I knew they were worth, but I knew that long-term that was what I wanted to have. And so I do believe that there are people out there, there are developers, there are individuals even within our community that would see value in that property to develop it, to make it something very useful, and make it just as pretty as a development that we might develop ourselves. But we need to go out to the marketplace and see who's out there and what they're willing to do. I think it would be very short-sighted of us to just write it off and say, that's just not going to happen, and let's not even take a shot at it. I don't know why we would do that.
Well, would we, so are we saying we should do the RFP and go to the experts about, you know, the downtown area designs and things like that? I mean, should we do that? Should we do both?
Well, the problem I see with that, from what Sean said, is that we're going to have to hire an architect, and he plugged in $250,000 for architectural services. Obviously, if you don't build something, you're not going to pay all of that.
I was really
I'm
more
reluctant
talking
to start
more
that
talking
process.
about just getting some input from.
Yeah, if we can, if the whatever that service that you talked about, the town square service is available to us, and it doesn't cost us a substantial amount of money, I'm willing to take multiple tracks and ferret this thing out in 10 different ways if we can get to the bottom of it somehow.
Can you do that, Sean?
We need to
Hold on, back up. The reason you go out and do both THC and an architectural and engineering firm and do the master plan simultaneously is your architectural and engineering firm that's doing your master plan is also engineering your water mitigation solution and putting together the construction documents to actually do that at the same time you're doing your THC proposal, which moves you down the road faster. THC, we don't know what the timing is going to be on. They may accept us next week. It may take 3 to 6 months for them to have an end product. In that 3 to 6 months with the master plan and an A&E firm on board to do that master plan, they can already be drawing and working on the water mitigation program, and that can go out to bid while THC is still working and you're farther down the road. If you don't stack those two together, you end up THC taking 3 to 6 months. If a private developer doesn't step forward, you're 6 months down the road before you're doing the RFQ for the architectural engineering to do the water mitigation, and you stage your RFQ so that you retain their services. You're not going to spend $250,000 up front. You're going to spend some dollar amount for master plan and assisting THC, as well as the engineering services associated with the water mitigation. If at that point you don't find a private developer to step forward through another RFQ of a public-private partnership with the drawings from THC and what you've worked on your master plan, then you can move forward with structural design for the shell building at that point if you so desire to do that. That's why you stack your A&E and your THC at the same time, is so that you're moving this process at a faster pace.
Well,
And we have 2 more public comments. Debbie Moore?
You've already talked about a few things I was concerned about, but I want to ask a couple questions. Where did the numbers that you came up with come from on what would be needed to mitigate the drainage and all that? Where did those numbers come from?
Looking at the reported information that we've been able to read, as well as visiting with architects, engineers, and designers about this project.
I was just wondering about that. And if this is offered to a private developer, would that lot be subdivided first? Because it's my understanding that 921 Main, that lot goes all the way to Water Street.
Correct. You would go in and re-subdivide it because the Alley parking lot is going to be at the rear, and that would be retained ownership by the city for the Alley parking lot and the drainage in the rear of the site.
Okay. And I agree that economic development doesn't always have to be in bricks and mortar, because there are national studies that we have had for years that show when there is a public gathering space, whether there's a roof on it or not, when there's a public gathering space in a downtown such as ours, it increases foot traffic. People stay longer. They eat more at our restaurants. They shop more at our shops because there's a place for a respite area. And not only that, I think that this board can spend money on historic preservation, and that fits into the downtown area. I just hope that before any decisions are made, whether it's made by this board or by the city council, that you have an opportunity to hear from the public that has used this lot a great deal over the years for everything from signing up for the Wine Swirl to a skating rink, to a music venue, to children's choirs, to plays, to acts. It has been used regularly until it got so unstable with that back wall that it just wasn't safe to use. So there is a lot of public interest in keeping it a public facility, a public gathering space. So before bricks and mortar is decided on, definitely, I hope you would consider that. And then also keep in mind, when you add square footage, you have to add parking spaces. So I think that's a consideration that needs to be taken seriously, because if you add 2.5 levels, then you're going to have more parking. And where's that going to come? Thank you.
Anybody else?
Bonnie Coffey.
Thank you. As someone who's on the board for Bastrop Main Street Program, I will tell you again what Bastrop Main Street Program was trying to tell you at the last City Council meeting, that the Smarziks have been exceedingly patient. I can't tell you, I would be willing to bet that they've spent a considerable amount of money mitigating some of the things that have gone on. So whatever you choose to do, whichever course you choose to take, I'd like for you to move on with it. These people have been exceedingly patient. I'm surprised they haven't sued somebody by now, but something needs to be done. I also have a question regarding Mr. Schiff's proposal at the City Council last meeting, and if I heard you correctly today, you actually had someone in mind for this when you made the proposal?
I say I know of somebody who spoke that they were at one point interested in having an apartment downtown. I should finish that and say that they have decided they don't want to do that. So I really don't know anybody that currently would like that slot. But the fact that one person said that would be a really neat thing to do, to live downtown and have some retail under them, tells me that there may be somebody in this community, not them because they said they don't want to do it now, but I think there may be somebody out there that's willing to build a residence downtown and have some retail under it.
I think you can understand my concern when we have city council members who also serve on BEDC. The implication was that you had someone in mind when you made the proposal at city council, so I just need to clarify that.
I don't have anyone in mind,
Okay.
but it really helped me for that person to approach me. It's been about 3 or 4 months ago to say, hey, who owns that property and what would we have to do if we wanted to do this and do that? And then at least 2 months ago they said, no, we really don't want to do that. But it woke me up and said, well, wait a second, if she's willing to do that, maybe there's somebody else that's willing to do that. And so I think we should throw it out there and see, hey, does anybody want to develop a loft apartment downtown and have some retail under it? I think it would be a great project for downtown.
Okay, just want to clarify that.
No more public comments.
Okay, well, appreciate all those public comments, and you know, we'll take a look at all the issues and meet with staff and see which direction we want. But I would just say, from our perspective, I still think we ought to do the RFP as you recommended council. I mean, I think I would support that from the board's position. I would think the board's position would be in sync with you on that.
Well, if you wanted to, I wouldn't vote on that, but if you want to make a motion along those lines that the BEDC supports that, I think the council would like to hear that, don't you think, Mayor?
I think that the staff has done a good job putting together an option. And I think that option ought to go to council. It's getting killed in committee before it gets out there.
Well, how would you do, I mean, how would you present that? Would you say you want to do it? I mean, I think that's a question.
No, but, I mean, then you'd have two things to look at. One is that we recommend that basically, okay, here's the recommendation, which is the recommendation is to Bastrop City Council to transfer control of 921 Main Street to the Bastrop EDC to develop a master plan for mixed-use commercial redevelopment with the understanding the EDC will at a predetermined time offer and consider selling the redevelopment to a private developer or entering into a public-private partnership. The EDC will strive through this redevelopment to benefit the city by 921 Main Street, generating sales tax and ad valorem taxes. That merits a hearing, to me, on the council level.
I think it's obvious, one of the things, that something has to be done. There's obviously, you know, the tendency, something has to be done. And again, I've said it, it's been there for a long time. And if by making this recommendation gets the ball rolling down the hill, we have to start somewhere. And whether it's, you know, maybe an RFP coming out, maybe the council says, we don't like this recommendation, or we're going to hold off on this recommendation, and we're going to put an RFP for the first 45, 60 days. Well, that's council's decision.
It gives them a couple of options to discuss, though. Right now, there's one option, and it's Gary's, and you've got your council hat on, I think, here today, and that's fine. It deserves discussion. I think this deserves discussion, too. We're just asking to put it forward. We're not the ones that will make a final decision on it. The council is.
And then, you know, I wouldn't say that I have my council hat on, because from an EDC standpoint, if I was on the council or I wasn't on the council, I just have a problem spending twice the value of anything downtown to build a new building down there. I cannot wrap my arms around that.
We were happy as bugs to spend that much money on a road with no potential development a year ago.
Yes, but there's difference there. When you build that building, that's all you have.
And that's all we.
You build a road, you have all that property available to bring jobs. Our job here is to bring, our primary job, if you look at the primary thing that we're set up for, to bring good quality jobs to this town. That's what the BEDC is about. We can do other things that boost economic development in this community, and I'd say we've done a lot. We have done a lot to promote downtown. We've had a facade renovation plan downtown Bastrop for years and years, which I might add I recommended way back when. And it's been very successful in fixing up not only the fronts of buildings, we've even expanded that to the mega grants to help people with structural and other issues in their buildings, improve the buildings downtown. We've funded the paving the process to repave Main Street. We've funded Alley D. We have funded a lot of downtown, and I think, you know, I think it's a little short-sighted to say that this board is not concerned with downtown, that we don't see economic value. I'm just saying, why not get a private entity to fix our problem and not cost anything to the city or the BEDC, or at least take a shot at it? It may or may not work, but I'm saying, hey, let's at least give it a try. It's sitting there.
Well, that's a discussion you should have with your fellow council members. This is a discussion about something the EDC can put forward to the council for discussion.
But I'm saying, if you put that forth, you're saying we are willing to put a $3 million building downtown Main Street. And I think, you know, the people in this room might say, hey, spend $5 million. But if it was coming out of your personal pocket, if you were taking that money, and that's what we are in charge. We are asked to watch over public funds, BEDC funds, and when I'm on the council, city funds, and I'm trying to do my best to see that the taxpayer's dollar is used as prudently as it can possibly be used. And that's what this whole discussion is about.
And I would agree, and I think we just have different attitudes about how to get there. Again, I think this merits a hearing.
Steve, when you mentioned, did I cut you off? When you mentioned economic impact studies, is that something our staff does?
No.
We have to pay for that?
On this project,
what does that cost?
On this project, we would do it through the THC Town Square Initiative.
What if we don't get it?
We can go out and hire a private firm to do it, but they are costly for this type of project. I mean, we're talking in the $5,000 range.
So who would that grant come to?
The Town
City or EDC or the Main Street program, or who would receive that money?
The Town Square Initiative is not actually any financial.
They go do the
it's
stuff.
Just services.
Who did you apply for?
For 921 Main Street.
On behalf of who? What
the
entity?
City of Bastrop. Mike signed off on it. And
well, okay, so that's a city issue, not an EDC issue. But if an impact study is important, then I don't see why we don't wait for the impact study. I mean, I know I know you're ready to move on this, but I'm not positive that the impact.
I'm sorry. We have to define what is going to be impacted.
So I'm hearing that we may get a free impact study put on by some folks from Texas something or other.
Yeah,
and so why don't we wait to see if that goes through before we make a decision? Because the impact study might tell us everything we need to know.
But we could be running it concurrently with some corrective work at the same time. And maybe the study says we're done.
So what corrective study do we need? But from us, from our staff?
So the water mitigation will be delayed 3 to 6 months unless the city takes that up as
well, I'm not talking about the city. I'm talking about what this board is going to do. And so my question is, you're willing to, so you said you want to move ahead and parallel. Mm-hmm. Okay, I know that the study is one thing. What's the other one?
The other is doing the development, basically doing the master planning, the AE, working with the whole, it pulls everything together.
And does that cost,
and we can start
is that staff, or how do we do that?
We will have to go out for an RFQ for an architectural and engineering firm to prepare the master plan and the engineering for the water mitigation. At the same time, our architecture and engineering team will work with THC in developing the best use for that site.
Well, how is that parallel? Isn't that premature?
They're running concurrent.
Because you're going to have to do the water mitigation in advance of starting construction.
I don't know if the EDC,
and you've got the public input coming in on all directions with people that can be drawing it up and saying, what about this, what about this?
I will say, let me just make a motion. See, let's test this. I move that the EDC, that's this board, agrees to start the process on behalf of the city for a building owned by the city at 921 Main Street to figure out the water mitigation, whatever that is.
So
there's no second. Somebody come up with another motion.
Well, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So this water mitigation, is that basically giving us the information on the wall structure and everything? When we start talking about water mitigation,
You're talking about the engineering necessary to prepare the scope of work, to put it to the street, to do the bidding and advertising, to select a contractor to do it.
Okay, so it sounds like more than, it sounds like a larger scope than water mitigation to me.
Well, because of the structure that's involved, yes, because you've got a fire damaged slab, you've got a rear wall that's unstable, you've got north and south walls that are deteriorating, you've got the joints on the base of those walls that have water penetration, as well as some possible storm drainage issues associated with the site. You're going to need an engineering firm to design that scope of work.
I know, but when you just talk about water mitigation, that encompasses all those things you just said.
Right.
All right, so that was confusing to me because I keep thinking about drainage. But water mitigation, you're talking about when they had to put that fire out and they've got water on those walls and the heat from the fire and all that kind of stuff. You cover all that.
Correct.
So at least we'll know what we're dealing with from a structural standpoint.
And from an EDC perspective, I would guess we could fund that, but I would think from a board perspective, and at least from a staff perspective, we'd want to control the process moving forward.
That's what I was going to comment. I mean, I understand if the study needs to happen, but if the BEDC doesn't own the property, why would the BED spend its money on a property that we're not owning? Now, in the proposal, it was to take control of the property, so then we'd be investing in something with control.
Correct.
But at this point, what you're asking is for, what he was suggesting is for us to spend the money for a study for the city to still control it, which,
Well, I expect the study we'll get back is like the SDAT study, which that was very, very definitive that it should be an infill building. We'll get back a study, but then there's nothing, then we talk about it again, and then it's just ongoing. What I like about this option is basically it's the best of both worlds, because we've got our consultants, we've got people that can be talking and putting together an active plan and fine-tuning those numbers.
Well, let me point out, I didn't get a second on my motion, so why don't you make a motion? Let's see if we can figure out what it is.
I want to make a comment before we make a motion. We are talking about a piece of property that we do not own. And if we do not own it, we shouldn't be spending money on it.
How much money have we already
invested in it? Let me finish. If we want to push this along, and if we want to push city council, shouldn't our motion be that the city take this on, and if they choose, that we write that into our proposal of we would pay them back for that at a later date, but not use EDC's money? Because again, we're talking about a piece of property. I would love, if I had a piece of property, I could run in here and say, EDC, can you help me out and start this ball rolling for me, and then we'll see if we like it and go from there.
That's what we did on the facade renovation. Those grants. That's what we did. We didn't own the property. We
correct.
gave that money to the
correct, but it was a match of 50-50 at that point on the facade.
I didn't hear that, Steve, because you said.
Oh, I was just talking about
the facade
grants that we gave to improve downtown. I mean, obviously that was money we were giving to the folks. Now, obviously they had to have, the matching. They did matching, or it represented like 20% of their investment.
On the mega grant, it was a 3-to-1, 25%.
All right, 25%.
Maximum of a $100,000 project, we rebated $25,000.
So my point is that again we were funding.
Sure.
Which we didn't know.
And I'm not saying that I'm totally opposed to doing any of that. I just want to make sure that we, that if it is our charge to get whichever proposal is moving, how can we make a motion to expedite that? How to get it into that? Now, I'm not saying that I agree with one or the other. I don't have enough information to sit there and to say I'm going to go down the left side of the road. But if I can tell you this, that property's been there the same way for a long time. It's an issue. We have to figure out a way to fix that. And one more question to you, Sean, and staff, is this something that staff wants to do, is to move forward with this, or what is, I mean, the recommendation is based on the information and the study you did. What is staff's recommendation as far as for that piece of property? Is that something that makes sense for EDC?
What we've put forward in this recommendation, in this proposal, is a very doable project if the EDC controlled the property and went out for RFQ for the master plan, worked with Main Street and the City of Bastrop on the THC, we could deliver this in a timely manner. I'd love to say that we could have an RFQ for engineering back to the board next month, and that would be our goal, but we could have an engineering firm no later than put the RFQ to the street and have them here within the next 2 to 3 months working on this with THC as they're making their decision-making process. It's a good project. You know, we're going to continue, if the board decides that this is not the right project for us to get involved in, we're going to continue looking at projects that the board asks us to, that we as staff identify until we can find a project the community supports. Because we need to find a project or a couple of projects that are going to enhance the economy of Bastrop, and this is a project that is ready to go today if the board so desired. There's other projects out there. We've continually looked at office campus developments. There's issues associated with that. That's why you haven't seen us bring that back to you yet. We still haven't solved the fiber issue for 1 gig, 10 gig fiber. And until that's solved, we think that leasing up office space is still going to continue to be difficult. We look at the park and go with infrastructure in the park. There's some unknown variables outside the park that we need to be solved within the next couple of years before we bring a proposal back for additional infrastructure in the park. We're looking every single day, what can we do to enhance the economy of Bastrop today that makes logical sense?
Okay, let me ask you a question. Isn't the first step here to understand what this water mitigation and what the condition of the slab and what the condition of these walls is? Isn't that the first thing we want to really quantify with the engineer?
Correct.
Okay. So, I mean, until we know that, I mean, we're kind of shooting in the dark on this 200 to 250,000. It might be 300.
That's a total project budget. It's not for each individual line item of the budget. That's a total project budget all the way to the end for finish out. So.
No, I'm talking about the 250,000 for water mitigation.
Oh yes, that's the commonly referred to number. It was in it's been reported by the paper. It's the number that's been discussed in meetings. Generally perceived, the people that have looked at it feel that the number is reasonable.
Oh, okay. Well, I don't know who that was or what profession. I guess you got some professionals in that gave you that number.
The city has had some people look at it, yes.
The city has, okay. So I'm not aware of that. Anyway, that's good.
I think what the BEDC could do that would have the biggest impact on the shortest path to a project completion would be for the BEDC to say to the council, we will take a 10-year lease in that building. If you deliver X number of square feet to us, we need to figure out how much do we need, and we need to look at what a fair price for rent price downtown for office space, and build in some escalation and say, Mr. Developer, individual, whoever you are that want to do something with this property, you can rent 1,500 square feet or whatever it is to BEDC for 10 years for some price. That would really entice a developer to build something if you have a lease in your hand.
I'm going to speak for if we don't do this building, operate this building, have control of this building, we don't need to be renting this building. We'll just stay out of it. I mean, why would we move our offices
We've talked
back?
about, that doesn't make any sense at all.
Well, you're guaranteeing a a city lease to an unknown private entity. And that's not something that we would want to do.
Sure we would.
Oh, heck no.
Aren't we leasing from a private entity now?
Yeah, sure we would. Why wouldn't we do that? Of course you do that. You build, people rent property. I have a deal I'm working right now. I have a tenant that came to me and said, if you'll build me a building, I'll rent from you. They haven't seen the building yet. I have a set of plans and specs. You build into this
Sean, do you want
clawback
to
provisions.
move back downtown?
We would if we had to.
But not because they want
But
to.
if we're going to structure
He
it
was
all-
just presenting that we would be tenants in this building.
If
Because
How did
we're
this
trying to
change?
make it work.
If we're going to structure a lease downtown as a public-private partnership, at least from my perspective, EDC staff wants to structure that. We do not want to be beholden to the city council in structuring that lease or that deal. Because at the end of the day, the private part of that's going to have to come in there, that's EDC skin.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I move that we offer the city $5 for the slab, not the parking lot, but the slab portion of that property.
Oh, and buy it?
$5. $4. I move that we spend $4.
But that makes the issue our problem, right?
That does. I mean, Sean's laying out, his staff saying we ought to deal with it. It's a good project for us. It makes a lot of sense.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
So basically, the alley portion of this
What
has
we-
always been pretty much slated for parking
Absolutely.
anyway, right? Isn't that what it's a necessity?
It's in process right now, so I'm talking about the building.
Okay.
And we could negotiate 5 feet or 10 feet for the, whatever you wanted to, I think. We'd be happy to, the city would be happy to negotiate for that. But if we want to deal with it, I'm just saying, do we want to deal with it or not? And I'm just saying, let's offer the city $5.
I actually kind of like that, that's fine.
Well, why don't you second it then, so we can talk about
Would
it?
you?
Are we ready to second that? Does
Any
there
more
need to be
discussion?
Well,
some
it only takes one person to second it. You take a we, it takes
Second, and then we'll
a...
have a discussion
I'll
about it.
second it. What the heck?
Okay.
So does
I
the
actually
city-
think that's a reasonable plan. Maybe the first reasonable thing that's happened today. And that is that if the BEDC wants to do economic development in this town, even if it's, I'm still against spending $3 million, but I'm not against developing that property and getting this so-and-so building done. I'm just tired of it. It needs to be dealt with. And I think that, and I still don't get why we wouldn't rent. If we want it developed, and we're a tenant, we gotta pay rent somewhere, we gotta buy something somewhere. I'm saying, let's put our money where our mouth is and say, developer, you fix this problem for us, and we'll rent from you. Why is that not just a fantastic
Just so this
plan?
board
I think
understands
it's-
it, just so I understand, but if we purchase it for $4 with the original offer.
I'll go back to 4 if I'll get you to pick at your vote.
Trying to buy my vote now for $1?
No, I'm just trying to compromise.
But we would take on the liability of that lot. That's a lot of liability for $4. I'm just wanting the board to understand from
It
that
is,
point forward.
without a doubt, it's a big
we would-
liability.
We would have to move
know
forward pretty quickly.
that it has a lot of baggage attached to it. But we're here to try to do the right
I'm
thing
all
for this
for fixing the hole in
community,
the-
to try to
missing tooth,
do
for
economic
sure.
development, and I think we can do economic development on that property. And I think we just got to be smart. I think we have an opportunity. We're spending $3,000 a month rent where we're at. We could put that money anywhere and say, hey, we'll rent this from you for the next 10 years as an incentive for you to build something there. Why would that not be the, why would you not do that? Why would you not do that? I don't get it.
I'm just going to say real fast too, one other thing, which is we have a really great staff, and I think this is the staff that can do this. I'm not sure who would pick this up on the city side if it was to be developed by the city, but I have absolutely no doubt that this group can move quickly and aggressively and get some positive results
They're
here.
going to mow the back.
We've got to give them clear parameters of what we want, and I'm not sure we're there yet, but I like the way, I like where this is going, I like the rental aspects of it, I think that's going to be key. you know, we got to spend the money for rent anyway, and so, and maybe something else will come along and we say, oh, we don't need to do that, you know. But at the same time, it's a great incentive, you know.
Without a doubt.
Yeah, we basically would be the anchor tenant on the second floor.
Yeah.
If the private developer or public-private partnership. I mean, and then that's the whole part of this process. You do the A&E with THC and you do the water mitigation. At that first opportunity, that's what you're saying to them with that RFQ to the street is private developer, public-private partnership. The EDC potentially will come in as an anchor tenant on the second floor. What's your best offer to either acquire the development from us or partner with us to develop that? And then if that doesn't work and the shell building has to go move forward, you have that opportunity again prior to tenant finish up. Hey, we're willing to lease space. Private developer, are you willing to buy it? Public-private partner, are you willing to invest in it? And the EDC will anchor the development.
And I would actually go further and not get that specific on the second floor, because what I'm thinking, a logical development for this would be, because I'm just very fearful of elevators because I know what they cost, and that would be somebody that would want to come in and on the ground floor put some retail. Didn't you say it's like 4,000 square feet?
It is.
You could do a 2,000 square foot retail in front, you could do a 2,000 square foot office in the back, and you could do residential above that, and find somebody that wants to live downtown, and you'd have all the things we're looking for. You'd have retail with tax, sales tax benefits. You'd have office space, so you'd have an anchor tenant that you would entice somebody to build this building, and they could live there if they wanted to. They could live upstairs.
We have a comment and a motion that's been moved and seconded,
and
correct?
we've got to get moving because we have council in 19 minutes.
So we
Connor McAnally?
Thank you. I just want to say that I object in the strongest possible terms to Mr. Gary Schiff using this forum to push his council agenda on this issue. I think it's wrong, and I think it's yet another example of why we should not have so many council members on the EDC board, number one, and number two, why they should absolutely not be allowed to vote. Thank you.
So we have a motion on the floor from the mayor for the EDC to offer the city $4 was the original offer.
I started with 5, but I got 4 to try to get a second, so it's 4.
$4 to acquire 921 Main from them with a second from Christie Koch. Is there any more discussion?
With the understanding that it's only the slab, it's not the part.
Yes, and that's all that we're talking about is the slab and reasonable distance behind it to the, yes.
Okay, so we've got that motion, and do we have a second at this point?
We did. Christie Koch seconded it.
Okay, we got a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
All opposed?
Any opposed?
Okay.
It was a long lap.
Should have thought about what he told me. Thanks for the discount.
All right. Item 4.3, we'll just shelve this one for now. We'll go over it in budget workshop, and then we'll bring it back.
We'll just make sure no one's here to say.
What's our time limit?
I tell you, Steve, if this meeting runs over, I'm just going to ask you to take a 10-minute recess while the city council organizes in the same room, and then we'll be in executive session. So I don't want to stop this meeting. I don't want anybody to rush a meeting up on important business just because I called a meeting at
we can come back to 4.3, but 4.4 is what we really need the full board here for, and we missed our window for the, well, probably not. I can probably give you a month. So part of the bylaw, 4.4 is consideration, discussion, and possible action making application to the City Council approving and authorizing BEDC's restated and amended articles of incorporation, including a recommendation from the Ad Hoc Bylaws Committee. So one of the things that the Bylaw Committee, when it got done looking at its review of the 8th amended bylaws and what was going to be the draft 9th amended bylaws, the committee wanted independent third-party legal counsel to take a look at those. And so we went out and asked for a recommendation from what is considered one of the most well-respected attorneys in economic development. He was not available, but he referred us to a gentleman in San Antonio by the name of Charlie Zeck with a law firm that has a really long name, Denton, Navarro, and something else, about 5 other names. And when Charlie got the briefing from us of the 8th amended, or the 8th bylaws that are currently in place, the 9th amended draft from the bylaws committee, he asked for the 2008 articles of incorporation from the EDC. And in the first conversation, it was, y'all need to stop, slow down, and we need to revisit your 2008 articles of incorporation and look at restating those. What is in your packet is a resolution from the board. Let me make sure I get this right. It is a resolution of the board finding and determining that the Exhibit A is the restatement you want to apply to the City Council to consider. So the process is the EDC adopts the resolution that's in front of them. We are then making an application to the City Council for them to adopt this resolution of the revised articles, and then the articles actually go to the Secretary of State's office where they're reviewed and accepted and we're notified back. What these articles do is codify the local government code chapters 501 to 505 into these restated and amended articles, clean up some statutory language, and then also simplifies them to be in compliance with the state law across all of the various sections of it. Once this is filed and we have receipt from the Secretary of State's office, the bylaws then can be vetted against the new articles and the state law that's in place. Did I explain that well, JC?
That's exactly right.
Okay.
If y'all will remember, the BEDC regulations used to be in Vernon, and then they were statutorily, the legislature moved them into the local government code into chapters 501 to 505. This change would make that match with our articles of incorporation. It also changes our address because we have
registered office.
a change of address, and just does some pro forma changes. It kind of brings them up to date, and then will allow the corporation to do its bylaw amendments or consideration. It's a cleanup, pro forma kind of cleanup, and it's a good idea.
Housekeeping.
And the red is addition, and the delete is take out. Correct. Everything else stays.
Correct. And to make the application, we actually have to show the council what the changes are, and this is the format that was recommended.
Okay. So, I mean, do we need a motion on this?
We do. We need a motion to adopt the resolution of application for amendments to the Articles of Incorporation of the Bastrop Economic Development Corporation.
Where are you reading that? I make a motion of what he just said.
All right. Got a second?
Second.
I'd like to speak, after people have had time to speak about this, I'd like to offer an amendment.
Okay.
But I don't want to prelude a general conversation first. I just want to put you on notice. I'd like to make a motion to
Well, we
amend.
might as well talk about this. Everything I saw here seemed pretty straightforward. I didn't have any additional comments or...
I move that under Article 7, under Board of Directors, that we add the following. The membership of the Board of Directors shall include the mayor, who may appoint on an annual basis, June to May, a city council member to occupy the mayor's seat, and the board may include one member other than a city council member who may occupy the mayor's seat. If I get a motion, I would like to speak to it. I'm in a second.
Can I?
Yeah, I'll read it again.
Can I ask a question of JC before we proceed with this? What the mayor just said, I thought that was going to be a part of the bylaws.
That's a bylaw change, not an articles of incorporation.
Why couldn't it be in the Articles of Incorporation?
The articles of incorporation are designed to track the statute, Mayor.
Why were they in the first one? Why was this a similar clause in the first Articles of Incorporation but not the revised?
Probably because people didn't know better. The articles of incorporation as my understanding, and as Mr. Zeck has drafted it, are to track 501 and 505. They'll be submitted to the Secretary of State. They'll be approved by the Secretary of State, and then the bylaws will have the things that are unique to the city. And that's the type of thing that would be unique to the city versus what is in the statute.
Can I ask a separate a question that's related some way? Yeah. I remember that when 2 years ago, when you did a report for us about who continues on a board, if there's a vacancy, that in some cases we had people that would continue to occupy that seat until their replacement was in place.
That's right.
And my memory is that, and I remember 2 boards that were important to me at that moment. My memory was this was not one of them, but the planning and zoning was. Are you? And I've heard from Sean that that's not your memory.
Excuse me.
My memory was that one of the boards that did have a continuation clause was planning and zoning, and a board that did not have a continuation clause was the EDC. And I asked Sean to check with you to make sure that you found your notes on that you did an extensive study for the city 2 years ago on that.
I remember the study, I don't remember the details.
Yeah.
Some of them are statutorily required, some of them were required by our ordinances at that time. Those have been amended and cleaned up to jive to the best of the city's ability to be what you had suggested.
Board
501 and 505
board members of the EDC continue serving
carryover
until such time as they are replaced.
And that's because
it's a Nonprofit Corporation Act issue, not in the local government code.
And that's because we have to have a quorum issue. Because the EDC is a 501 instead of like a city board of commission, it falls under different statutes and controls than our standard boards of commission.
Okay.
So that would have been research that we did back to.
Possible that my memory is incorrect.
And mine may be too.
But if it is, then you're saying, if my memory is correct, you're saying you were wrong then, 2 years ago.
What I said 2 years ago.
I withdraw my motion.
All right, so you were asking about the articles, so you're withdrawing that?
Correct.
Okay, and as I understand,
I understand it's illegal. It's illegal for me to do what I did, so I'm never going to try to do anything illegal.
Okay, all right, so that's withdrawn.
Any other discussion?
That motion has been withdrawn.
Well, his motion to amend has been, but
the main motion's on.
The main motion is on the
Christie's
table.
motion to adopt the articles of resolution with a second from Cam.
Okay.
Unless there's more discussion, we have ready to vote.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Do you want me to say aye louder for you?
No. You have to ask.
But you always look at me like I'm supposed to say no.
Do you get that? Okay.
Yeah, 5
So,
minutes.
back up to 4.3, consideration, discussion, possible action on the possible expansion of Loop 150 South Trail from SQ to Highway 71. This is an interesting project. I think it's one that we need to consider for the next budget year. It's about 900 feet of this trail expansion from basically where DPS and Childers and Old Austin Highway run into 71. Kind of where the monument sign is on the east side of the highway, the red line here. Estimated cost visiting with the engineer, looking at about $180,000 including engineering costs. That is an 8-foot trail expansion down through there, or an 8-foot trail currently down through there. It basically would tie the downtown district in with the new residential at Pecan Park, as well as the commercial at Bastrop Station and Walmart and the apartments there off of Childers. It's really all we're looking for right now is guidance from the board if this is something that y'all would be interested in seeing more work on in next year's budget.
I absolutely.
Yeah, I think it's a good project.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Project.
Talk about this. We need a motion on that?
No, at this point, when we get to the budget workshop, but I wanted to make sure it was presented publicly so everybody had an opportunity to comment if y'all so desired, because our budget workshops are not very exciting.
That's an understatement.
All the reports and updates and announcements are in your packet. I do have, well, I'll ask it in a little bit whenever we get to that point. Any questions on mine? If y'all read it. If you haven't read it, you can read it and call me. Bylaw committee, you've heard what we're doing. Sarah, yours is in there. We've done the excerpts from Mike's are in there. Comprehensive plan, I know I've got a meeting on transportation later this week. You have any other update? And then construction project report is in there. I think at this point, let's take a break for the council, and then I can go do a quick budget preview with the non-council members, which won't take too long.
Are we having an executive session today?
We need to, yes. Actually, can we go do that real quick?
Yeah. Why don't we do that real quick?
The BEDC Board of Directors will meet in closed executive session pursuant to the Texas Government Code, Chapter 551, to discuss the following: Section 551.071, 1A, and Section 551.0712, consultation with attorneys, threatened and/or contemplated claims, causes, or litigations, and/or matters upon which the attorney has a duty and/or responsibility to advise or report to the governing body. 2, Section 551.072, deliberations about real property, including but not limited to potential sales, acquisitions, exchanges, leases, disposition, or values of the following real properties: Project Bronze Star, Project MT Star Wars, 903 Main Street, and/or property owned and/or considered for acquisition used by the BEDC. Section 551.087, deliberations regarding economic development negotiations, Project Bronze Star, Project MT Star Wars, Project JetBlue, and/or Project White Phone. And Steve, what are we in?
Executive session. We are in executive session.
Yes, because we need to take action on this.
Yes.
Steve has called us out of executive session. We are looking at item 7.2. BEDC Board of Directors will reconvene into open session to discuss, consider, and take any necessary action related to the executive sessions noted herein above, and/or regular agenda items noted above, and/or matters related to the same. Do you want me to give some explanation?
Yeah, please.
So we have one offer on 903 Main Street for $138,000 from David and Libby Sartain. Do we have a motion to accept the offer and authorize Steve Mills and/or Executive Director Sean Kirkpatrick to execute the contract and any other related documents?
I move the EDC accept the offer on 903 Main Street.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay. Just note for public record, that's been 6 weeks. 6 weeks. It's been on the market with no other offers.
6.0 workshop. We're going to convene into a workshop session, a 2016-17 budget review and discussion regarding fiscal year 2016-17 budget for the Bastrop Economic Development Corporation, including 16-17 BEDC budget, the BEDC strategic plan, and 16-17 scope of work and potential capital improvement projects. We have pages. Hey Cam, you want to move down here?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't think that'll work. All right, so what y'all have in front of you is the first draft from staff to y'all, and kind of all we're going to go through real quick is kind of the formatting and the general budget categories that we're going to look at on the 11th.
Excuse me. Can we, we're just doing a meeting back here. Can we ask that we just keep it down just a little bit? We'll be really quick and we'll be out of the way. Thank you.
So revenue-wise, we're looking at total revenue of about $2.185 million. Right now, we have total expenses at $101.793 million. Looking at the first expense category is BEDC administration for a total of $315,802, or 14.45% of revenue, which is in line with where we were for the 15-16 budget. There's no real significant changes there. BEDC operations is operations, so we're looking at $98,444 or 4.5% of budget against revenue. No real significant changes in the percentage against revenue there. And we'll go through the detail on the other. Marketing and advertising, we are seeing a little bit of an increase here, actually not a whole lot, 0.09%. So, so marketing and advertising, $132,000, 6.04% of expense versus budget, about 9.09% higher. We are going to redo a couple of these categories and the labels on them. Of note,
we're out of the billboard business.
We are out of the billboard business, and we've reallocated those funds. Regional advertising, national advertising, digital advertising, and then special advertising and marketing. You'll notice all those red categories are kind of how we're going to relabel those to better term them for how we actually use them. And the same on the travel accounts, marketing travel and then training travel. Any questions on M&A? No. Professional services, $123,300, 5.64% of expenses versus revenue. We are going to pick up some additional professional services next budget year, but I'll go through the detail on the 11th with that. We're expecting a little bit more project workload next year, so you're going to see our legal jump up. 24,000 is kind of our base number for we don't do any projects, don't do anything, is what our legal is going to cost. Anything above that is actually project related. And then you're looking at engineering and contractual services, which is the Kershaw, our third of the Kershaw parking lot downtown that we lease. That really kind of goes up a little bit, but stays in line with where we're at. City projects and support. This actually, $229,000, there's no real change over the current budget year. $139,000 for contracts for services. That's our mowing services with the Parks Department.
This is the one category I have questions about with the change in the city leadership. Some of the expectations here, can they be?
We can address that at the workshop on the 11th. Main Street program support for $40,000, and then city administrative support, that's finance, IT, HR, all those people, $50,000. That actually goes down because that number stayed the same against revenue. BEDC projects and grants. I would like to create a new special grant fund for disaster relief, a small grant fund that we administratively administer. It's to be developed, but I'd like to put $10,000 in there to develop a small grant program for businesses affected by disasters.
That's interesting.
You brought that up several months ago.
Yeah.
I think it's a great idea.
We got to set the program guidelines and do a lot of work, and we'll go into more details. Redevelopment grants, which is a continuation of the program we haven't gotten off the ground this year, but Sarah is working real hard, and we're going to get together in the next couple of weeks and hopefully get the program guidelines lined out and be taking applications sometime hopefully this fall. So right now I have that set at $50,000 for next budget year. We'll see what the demand is on that. Education and workforce development, that's probably one of our most successful projects. The EDC, that's going to be $10,000. Entrepreneurial and small business development, another special project at $10,000. Our 380 reimbursement agreement, which is Buc-ee's and Burleson Crossing, needs to go up to $350,000 for next year. They're being successful, and so we're rebating more money. And I'd like to have some cushion there to make sure I don't run out of money next year. I've done the projections. That's the number it needs to be.
Wow. We're back down to that.
We still have 4 or 5 more years, but we're getting close.
I thought it was capped at $150,000.
I'll have to look up the numbers, but I've got a whole spreadsheet of the incentives and the calculations on it. It needs to be $350,000. Water rights funding at $60,000. Then our Type A projects, incentives, and rebates, that's also part of that same spreadsheet. $49,205 is what we're looking at in rebates next year. That's assuming that everybody that's in the 48.5 from this year gets rebated this year. If not, they'll we'll have to make an adjustment and roll it forward. Next pay, so that is $549,205 or 25% of budget of revenue. The next page is the infrastructure projects. I will insert under trail system, SQ Highway, the $180,000 as we discussed. Yeah. So that will be in there on the 11th.
Where's the 180?
It'll be the trail system, SQ Highway 71.
It's not on there yet. It's going to insert.
Next page, Steve.
Can I ask you a quick question? I'm hung up on this. The 380 grid, that's Bucky's, right?
And Burleson Crossing.
And?
It's the combination of the two.
Okay, good.
And I have the calculations separately for both of them.
Okay, I'm good. I got you.
So, yeah, where it says SV, we'll add 180 there. And then debt service, 345, 350, but remember the board has approved the defeasance on the certificate of obligation 2008A, which will be about another 350,000 to pull out a fund balance.
So you're going to pay that off?
Correct.
That was that overrule?
Correct.
How much was that?
It'll be about 350,000.
What was the series on that?
It's the CO 2008. The city just refinanced their portion, ours is called, which in the future will free up 30,000 in cash flow moving forward and save us a chunk. Which, if you'll flip back to the front page, you'll see this bold number that's kind of in between revenues and expenses. That 392, subtract 180,000 off of that, which will give you $212,000 and some change. That is the unallocated portion of expenses over revenue. It's a lot more than last year. And it includes we took 180,000 out to do the trail expansion project.
Correct.
This is before.
Considerably, it's close to 23, 25%.
Yeah. So
you got unallocated 212,000, basically, is what you said?
Yes, sir, at this point.
Oh, we need to speak up.
Oh.
We're whispering.
Speak up.
Sorry. That's all that I have for the budget preview. I wanted y'all to get your copy of this in your hands in advance of the meeting on the 11th so that y'all can take a look at it. If you have any questions, get with me. I will gladly answer them. Which Steve can take us out of workshop and then we can adjourn.
Okay. Unless we're out of workshop at this point, so.
Okay. I do have one more thing on 8.0 and 3 of the members are missing. Do y'all want to go to a digital board for your future agendas and us order you iPads?
Yes, because as you can see what I'm taking with me, it's going to be this.
Okay.
Y'all's call on that.
Not really, I mean.
We'll still print one for you. We'll do it both ways.
All right. I would really have to do it. I don't
I
mind
can
it.
go either way, having is fine.
Yeah.
Whichever way you guys like.
Yeah, I'm the only way, so, but.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and order a handful of them and see what the early adopters move forward with trying it out and showing the others how it works. And then as you feel comfortable and want to get involved, let us know.
Oh, well, if you get a order, I'll take one. I just get
I can get you a keyboard if that's what you want.
That's what I want.
I can do that.
Yeah, I can do that, because I've got an iPad and I've really used it for mapping and things like that. It's not friendly.
Okay.
But it saved it digitally. I won't have to save
That's what I did in leveling with my iPad. Set a keyboard and take the notes right there and
Yeah,
there.
I can go for that.
I'm going to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good job.